Welcome back. I'm here today with Chris Stakich. He's the CEO of Rustic Pathways. Chris, welcome to today's show.
Thank you for having me.
So Chris, give me some background, how you ended up where you are today and what you do before coming in.
Sure, so I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and I grew up in a very Midwestern, middle-class type of family. And around ninth grade, I had the opportunity to go to an all-boys private prep school. And I was a financial aid student there, played football and basketball, great high school. And it led me to the opportunity of playing football for Harvard University, and went through 4 years of great university background. And when I graduated from college, I knew deep in my heart that I wanted to work in the fields of education, in the fields of travel, in the fields of some type of service or giving back. And that's really what led me to Rustic Pathways.
So what is the mission of Rustic Pathways?
The mission is obviously an important part of the overall company. We're a mission-driven company. But before I explain what we do, I'd like to explain why we do it, because I think the vision is actually the more important driving force and compass for the company. We first and foremost want to create a world where travel is an essential part of every education. Everyone out there these days should be traveling around the world, meeting people in different cultures and communities. The second thing is that we want to create a world where travel is a model of sustainable development. And so taking the $7 trillion that are spent in travel and figuring out how to mobilize that money and mobilize those people to do very important good things out in the world. Our mission of what we do is we empower students through innovative and responsible travel experiences to positively impact lives and communities around the world. And it's one of the greatest things that I could imagine doing on a daily basis.
And when you send these students out, they're really getting involved in the culture, kind of off the grid? Or?
There's a couple things that make Rustic Pathways different from almost any travel organization you'll find out there. And one of them is that we very specifically focus on taking students to the far-flung corners of the world where there are local communities that don't see many visitors, where our students are able to plug into those communities and have real cultural immersion, cross-cultural experiences that are completely beneficial for our students and also very beneficial for the villages where we work and where we're living.
How do you find these villages, and how do you set up your organization there?
It's a great question. It's what we refer to as our secret sauce. But it's what we do is we are travelers out there in the world as staff that work in these countries, and like any of you, as you're going through your daily life and you're eating in restaurants and traveling in taxi cabs and buying groceries at the store, every once in a while you come across one of those magic people that's just above and beyond. They have that smile on their face. Their spirit is glowing. And we ask them their story, like, hey, how long have you been working in this grocery store? What's your dream in life? Where do you come from? What's your family like? And when there's the right type of connection, we invite those local staff members to work on our programs with existing local staff members from their country and with some of our staff members from the United States and other places. And basically, they'll work with us for a year or 2 years, and when it's a real fit, we will offer them a full-time position working for our organization, typically coming from remote Cambodia or remote Costa Rica. They're making more money than most people they've ever met, and they invite us back to their communities. They want us to meet their parents and their aunts and uncles and play soccer on the field that they played soccer on, and that type of thing you can't create. You have to be, sort of invited into that type of environment.
Have you been involved in actually being the pioneer and setting up some of these areas?
Yeah, my first assignment with the organization was to open 7 different programs in Costa Rica. And we had a surf program, an adventure touring program, a language school, and then 4 different community service projects, village-based community service. And it was one of the most challenging, eye-opening, humbling, and at the end of the day, just exciting parts of business that I've ever been involved in was, again, through meeting these people with such powerful life stories and with, huge dreams, and then going back to their communities and meeting their parents and seeing where that comes from, and then being able to connect the dots and bring students over from the United States to participate in that, and to mobilize against some of that money to do positive things in that community. It's rare to find these win-win-win situations anymore, and being the facilitator of that creation, it was awesome.
I'm visiting here today with Chris Stakich. He's the CEO of Rustic Pathways, and we've been visiting about the Rustic Pathways mission and in providing education for students around the world. Chris, I need to take a quick break,
Okay.
And we'll be right back after these messages.
I love fishing, with my family.
I think it would be easier to use a net.
It was so much fun.
The times when we are together, it makes it all the more worth it.
Having Dad teach them how to cast a fly rod, and
as long as we're doing stuff together, we're having fun.
Some people see a father and a son fishing together, while others see a succession plan.
Welcome back. I'm visiting here today with Chris Stakich. He's the CEO of Rustic Pathways, and we've been talking about the mission statement of Rustic Pathways, educational experience for students. How many programs do they put on a year?
So we actually have 100 different programs throughout 17 countries in the world. Those programs run every week to every other week during the summertime. And then in addition to that, we create customized programs for school groups and also for older age students from 18 to 22 years old. So we have programs going on year-round, every single day of the year in these 17 countries around the world. And they're based on the format of these 100 lone standing models.
In today's world, we hear about Ebola, these epidemics going around the world. And of course, students going into remote areas, are there health or safety concerns?
We have a director of safety and risk management, one of the most important people in the company. Safety is always every parent's number one concern. So we have a massive approach to safety and risk management, which would have to be a 4-hour interview to explain how that all works. But everyone's concerned about it. And being the CEO of Rustic Pathways, the one thing that keeps me up at night is thinking through, what if, that disaster was to happen? What if a student got Ebola? What if a plane, crashed? And ideally, it's things that are way out of our control.
And typically when these programs, groups going out, how big are your groups?
They are typically group sizes of 16 students and 3 staff members. We go down as small as 10 students with as many as 4 staff members on a program like that. And then we have purpose-built community service bases for high school students where we can hold up to 85 students on the base. And during the daytime, they could work on one of 12 different projects in 30 different local communities.
Projects. This is a new word to me. Tell me about what a project would be for these.
Okay. So we have a huge variety of community service projects around the world. Again, we have one person that solely focuses on this aspect of the company. She's the Global Director of Community Service, and she essentially is creating projects with the local communities through the local leaders and through sometimes the chiefs of those indigenous communities. And we look to create things that are highly beneficial for the local community, something they're asking for, that's absolutely in alignment with best practices in international development, and at the same time can practically plug in with a high school age type of group. So they typically are large scale construction projects that benefit the whole community, like community kitchens, and local community centers, things like that.
So there's a charitable aspect to some of these projects where maybe charities could come and fund?
Absolutely, and we have a not-for-profit arm of the organization that's specifically designed to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars to magnify the size of those projects.
Why do you feel it's important for young people to see the world?
This is my mission in life. I mean, I feel like it's absolutely essential for every person to get out there and travel around the world. And I would say that for 2 main reasons. Number one, I feel like people who travel develop this thing that they refer to as global compassion, global empathy. They understand how different people work, regardless of what country they come from, regardless of what religion they practice, regardless of that background component. And I believe that that will be a major contributing factor to overcoming things like world hunger, environmental destruction, world wars. You know, when you can sit down and break bread with people, you have a different type of empathy. Number two, for students in today's day and age, if they are not traveling, you know, if they're not getting out in the world and learning how cultures and communities work, they are going to be absent from the global economy. You know, you have to understand how to create solutions and then transfer those across language barriers and across cultural differences to succeed in what will be the world in 10 years.
I'm visiting here today with Chris Stakich. He's the CEO of Rustic Pathways, and we've been talking about the mission of Rustic Pathways to give students an educational experience by living in communities off the grid. Chris, I need to take a quick break.
Okay, sure.
And we'll be right back after these messages.
Thanks.
When I grow up, I want to work with very successful people.
I want to advise people so that they can pay less tax.
Hang out with my clients on the golf course.
Fishing.
And on their private yachts.
They will all be my friends too.
I want to work with the VCs who will fund the next Fortune 500 company.
When I grow up, I want to be just like my dad.
Money won't buy you happiness in life, but we can help take care of your financial affairs so you can focus on what's really important. Welcome back. I'm here today with Chris Stakich. He's the CEO of Rustic Pathways, and we've been visiting about the mission of Rustic Pathways to give educational experience to students around the world and communities off the grid. I want to go back and focus more on the community service aspect of Rustic Pathways. What is a typical project?
A typical project that is very successful gives back to the local community first and foremost. And to find the type of project that will be worthwhile, you have to include the community in those very, very early conversations. The second thing is that we run it through a system of filters and rules that we have that make sure that our projects align with best practices in international development. It's something that objective people would look at from the outside and say, yeah, this is truly a good thing to do. The third consideration is that we need to design projects that also fit our community of 14 to 18-year-olds. Things that are very, very successful for us tend to be things like building schools. You know, building a community garden is an example where the community can come together with the students and jointly, through working together, you get through language barriers, you get through cultural barriers, and you create something that is much greater than when all these people got together. And the interesting thing is, you know, when it rains and you're having issues in the garden, or someone stole the supplies in the middle of the night and you're trying to deal with that, you know, these foreign cultures and the students that we're bringing are faced to deal with challenges together and sort of, you know, push through those challenges. And that's some of the true skill sets that our students gain on the program.
What are some of the experiences that you have personally been involved with as you've gone through these service projects?
One that just came out very recently was an organization by the name of Save the Rain that works in Tanzania, and they provide clean water catchment tanks on top of families' homes. And these communities in Tanzania are very typically, you know, that picture you see on TV where they have to walk 3 hours each way to collect water every morning, and the water is the color of mud. It is not safe drinking water, and they boil it, they drink it anyway. Whereas if they had this rain catchment tank on their roof, which costs $400, that family will have clean water forever. And so we met with this lady, Kelly Coleman from Save the Rain, and what she lacks is the ability to get $400 and $400 and $400. But for us, it's a real sustainable model where we can build a program around that project. And with every 2 students, $200 from each of them will bring together the $400. We'll buy the materials. Those students will work with an individual family and local construction workers. And within a week, we will provide a water catchment tank for a family. When Kelly and I spoke about this, her eyes opened, and it was that moment where she realized, here's a sustainable funding source. And I said, Kelly, you know, I honestly think that within the next 7 to 8 years, we could build all 12,000 water catchment tanks that Save the Rain needs to complete your vision as a nonprofit. You know, it's those type of things that when all things come together, that's just so powerful.
And how do you go about creating new programs?
It's probably the most fun part of the job. At the end of every year, we probably have 90 or 100 program proposals from students, from staff, from the local communities where we work. And again, we boil them, figuratively boil them up, and we say, here's 6 new things we want to try this year. And as part of our mission, we're trying to create innovative program models. And so we will look at these different models and say, you know what, this is the year we want to bite off something like from the ground up, a program in Cambodia where students go and they work with local nonprofits and figure out how those nonprofits were started, how they're funded, what types of challenges they face, how they measure their impact compared to their vision. And then the students donate money to one of the nonprofits through their different proposals that they give our students. And essentially our students are learning about this is how you start an NGO internationally. That was an idea that a student came up with that we started and has been very successful. And again, there's over 100 programs that are like that.
It's not all work. Kids have a lot of fun too.
So yeah, absolutely. I remember when I accepted my job with Rustic Pathways and I opened Costa Rica. And the second week we had students, it was a Wednesday afternoon, 2 in the afternoon, and I'm sitting out in the waves off the coast of Playa Grande in Costa Rica on my surfboard, bobbing up and down. And I'm thinking, wait a second, I'm at work. And even more importantly, my boss would be extremely happy that I'm sitting in the waves with these students bobbing up and down. And that's part of, to me, every day I wake up and I don't feel like I'm going to work. I feel like I'm going to do something that aligns with my life mission and something that's just so fun and rewarding. And the kids have an absolute blast. The other side of the company, you're snowboarding, helicopter snowboarding in New Zealand, you're bungee jumping, you're skydiving, you're scuba diving with sharks. I mean, there's all of that stuff in there as well.
So you have a wide range. The experience off the grid, are they intense, or what type of living?
So they can be extremely intense. I mean, some of the most intense, riding across the plains of Mongolia for 3 weeks on horseback, sleeping in Changpa tents with nomad communities. I mean, something like that is very intense. And all the way on the opposite end of the spectrum, we have a program called The Wonders and Riches of Southeast Asia, where they stay in the Shangri-La and the Mandarin Oriental, and they get suits tailored, and it's a real senior year huge present for the type of student and family that wants something like that. So there's a huge variety of experiences for students.
So these are high school, they're not college age students, or what?
The main group of students that we travel with are from 14 to 18 years old, and we do have a gap year division for 18 to 22-year-olds. Those experiences tend to be 3 months at length and are that much more powerful because they're out in the field for a longer period of time.
What happens if a parent wants to chaperone their kids?
They're not allowed.
Okay.
I've actually had parents, personally when I ran Costa Rica, find out where their son was going to be and fly there and show up on the program after I told her a couple times that wouldn't be able to happen. To be honest, I facilitated a couple dinners for her son and her. As you would imagine, that pulled him out of the group, that created this whole thing oh, his mom's here. It ended up ruining his experience, so I wouldn't have suggested it. But part of the power of the programs is that these students are away from their families, they're away from their friends, they're away from their life stories.
Rustic Pathways has different programs around the world. Mm-hmm. Is there a favorite?
You know what? I mentioned the program, the Surf the Summer program. I mean, to me, that's what I need in my life, a little re-energizing of my body, mind, and spirit. However, there's another program called Come With Nothing, Go Home Rich, where students come to Thailand with just the backpack on their back, just medications and a dop kit, and they spend the first day shopping in the largest outdoor market in Southeast Asia, $50 to buy all the clothes and rope and tools they'll need. And then they travel for 3 weeks along the Thai-Burmese border, visiting off-the-map villages that don't have names, that are filled with refugee communities, where everything is needed. And they live with these local communities and do some of the most powerful work I've ever seen in my life.
So Chris, if a person wants more information on Rustic Pathways, where should they go?
RusticPathways.com. Pretty much type in Rustic Pathways into Google and they'll find us.
Been visiting here today with Chris Stakich. He's the CEO of Rustic Pathways. Chris, thanks for being on today's show.
Thank you for having me.